Okay, so if you thought you were having a bad day today, I would like to personally assure you that it is exponentially better than Blake Lively's, because she has just discovered that she is being sued again for defamation again by a man named Jed Wallace. And don't worry, guys, this time it's only for $6 million, so at this point, that's like a walk in the park for her. On today's episode, we also, for the very first time, have a Be Better exclusive. I have my first exclusive inside source that I think is pretty explosive, so I'm excited to share that with you guys. So as always, grab a snack, take a seat, because it's going to be another long night. So as I just mentioned, Blake Lively is now being sued by a man named Jed Wallace. You might be thinking, Be Better, who the hell is Jed Wallace? I'm going to tell you. So if we go back to Blake Lively's original complaint, one of the more explosive allegations was what she said about this mysterious subcontractor from Texas. She said, they also retain subcontractors, including a Texas-based contractor named Jed Wallace, who weaponized a digital army around the country from New York to Los Angeles to create, seed, and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums. So something very important to note is this original filing that we all saw in the New York Times article was not a lawsuit. It was a complaint filed with the California Civil Rights Department. And these are administrative filings that are not typically made public. So what Jed Wallace's lawyer is alleging is that Lively weaponized this administrative filing, submitted it to all of these media outlets and specifically the New York Times. And in doing that, he was falsely lumped into all of these horrible allegations of sexual harassment and a smear campaign that he says he had no part of. And as a result of that, has lost millions and millions of dollars through his public relations business. So something very important that I noticed in reviewing this is very shortly after Lively's legal team filed the real lawsuit after the complaint, the entire Jed Wallace storyline was completely excluded from it. So what I'm curious about is if these allegations were true and Jed Wallace was really the mastermind behind the orchestration of the smear campaign, why was he excluded? And I think the reason may be that they were hoping that these allegations would simply stop at this complaint and they wouldn't have to investigate it further. But when they had to actually go the real route of true litigation, they knew that the facts didn't really substantiate this story. Because Jed Wallace is now saying he's never engaged in a smear campaign with Lively, he has never met her, and basically has no idea what's going on. So at this point, Blake Lively's legal team has already responded to this new lawsuit and has stated that this is simply a continuation of the smear campaign and an act of retaliation for the sexual harassment. I would again state that Jed Wallace has never met Blake Lively, so I'm not sure how Lively's team believes that you can sexually harass someone you've never met, but at this point, it seems like they're accusing everybody. I'm worried they're going to accuse me. They're going to accuse you. You get accused of sexual harassment. You get a car. You get accused. Like, you know what I'm saying? So something else I wanted to bring up with you guys, because I did end up reading this book, is what I didn't know is at the end of it, there's a note from the author where Colleen Hoover explains that the characters of Lily and Ryle are actually based off of her parents, and Lily is deeply inspired by her mother, and her mother ended up leaving an abusive relationship. It was very heartfelt. And for a moment when I read that, I was like, oh wow, you know what? This makes a little bit more sense to me. I understand why, even though I thought this was an awful book, why it meant a lot to women that read it specifically. And then I was reminded of this email that Colleen Hoover sent to Justin Baldoni in 2019. So 6 years ago, she was talking about potentially selling the rights to Justin. And she said, my biggest fear is that I'll sell the rights to someone who thinks it's a rom-com and they'll take it in the absolute wrong direction. You can't write this. And now we have to move on to the infamous personal trainer. So as I'm sure you guys remember, the reason this entire fat shaming debacle happened is because Justin Baldoni inquired about Blake Lively's weight to Blake Lively's personal trainer, who was also training Justin Baldoni at the time, which we know because we have several receipts that prove that. So this personal trainer, his name has been revealed as Don Saladino, celebrity personal trainer guy. He had a photo up of his wife along with Ryan and Blake Lively, and he edited the caption. I want to read to you guys what he said. He said, there have been negative comments on this post, negative comments sent to my wife, and believe it or not, negative comments sent to my children. To be clear, Justin Baldoni is not my client. I created a complimentary program for him as a favor to a client, Blake. I've never trained him virtually or in person. I never met him in person. We communicated via calls and texts from January to March 2023. I could not accommodate his schedule and found him a coach. After an uncomfortable conversation, asking about Blake Lively's weight, communications ended. So there's two main reasons why I don't trust this personal trainer. Number one, I think it's very childish for an adult to come up to you and ask you a very reasonable question like, hey, how much does Blake Lively weigh so I can adequately train my back muscles to lift her? And then for you to go and run to Blake Lively, who you know is insecure about her postpartum body, and say, Justin Baldoni asked how much you weighed and he fat shamed you, but you didn't hear from me. That is so Regina George coded and not a way that an adult behaves, in my opinion. And number two, a very quick Google search will show that if you go on his website, I'm looking at it now, the main programs he sells are workout programs with Deadpool, Ryan Reynolds, and Blake Lively. So he's obviously benefiting financially from their friendship. I'll show it to you guys right now. So I think that's hardly a neutral, unbiased source to be getting our information from. Like, honestly, what was his motivation with telling Blake Lively what Justin Baldoni had asked? I think it was probably to further his friendship with her by throwing someone else under the bus. And it reminds me of like being in high school and then your friend comes up to you and they're like, listen, I didn't want to have to tell you this, but Jake thinks that you're a fat, ugly fuck, but you didn't hear it from me. I'm only telling you because I'm your friend and I want you to know. You know that person's telling you that to make you feel like shit, but they're doing it to be like, oh, but we're friends, so I just had to disclose this information to you. That's what it's giving. Now, in my investigation, I also came across some information that I think is very, very damning. So we all know that Brandon Sklenar was one of the first people to come out and publicly back Blake Lively, right? Okay, hold that in your mind. What happened next? Then Blake Lively starred in the sequel to A Simple Favor 2 with a guy named Michelle Morone. This is the star basically from the movie 365 Days. He also came out and publicly backed her. This director of A Simple Favor 2 is Paul Feig, who also came out and publicly backed Blake Lively just today. And then guess what? It's just been announced that both Brandon Sklenar and Michelle Morone are casted in the new movie The Housemaid. And guess who the director is? It's Paul Feig. The same director has casted them, who are really not that famous at all, especially Brandon Sklenar. He was a total nobody before It Ends With Us. And now they've both been rewarded for this movie by Paul Feig, which is adapted from a book. So it seems like Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have pulled their strings and have already rewarded the people who have come out and publicly supported them. Now, as if this story couldn't have gotten any crazier, we have a ghost visiting us from Christmas past. Do you guys remember the disgraced lawyer named Elaine from the Amber Heard trial, who was quite possibly one of the worst lawyers I've ever seen publicly argue a case in my entire life? She is back and seemingly publicly auditioning to be the newest member of Blake Lively's legal team with one of the dumbest takes I have ever seen. Let's take a look at what she said.
New York, as does Florida, they have anti-SLAPP litigation, and New York has really strengthened theirs. If you retaliate, like Justin Baldoni has here with his lawsuit, because she has spoken out on a matter of public concern, which certainly sexual harassment is, he is in danger of getting his case dismissed.
So what Elaine very stupidly missed in her analysis is that these anti-SLAPP laws exist in New York State, but this case is in federal court. So it doesn't apply. Everything she said was 100% categorically false. I have no idea where she got her law degree from. But you know what, Elaine? You join Blake Lively's legal team. Don't let them tell you no. I don't know about you guys. I want to see her join that team. I want to see her for part 2 in the courtroom. Get Elaine in the courtroom. Woo! And now for the moment you've all been waiting for. So my source has told me that Lively's legal team is allegedly attempting to amend their filing and add Jenny Slate as a plaintiff to the lawsuit. But Jenny Slate allegedly does not want to be involved in this mess at all. And if she rejects their offer to be made an actual plaintiff in the case, which seems likely, they're likely going to subpoena her anyway and just include her testimony or her as evidence because she allegedly has had some very bad experiences with Justin Baldoni in regard to harassment or being made to feel uncomfortable on set. I think at this point, Lively's team very strongly believes that if they're able to add more women officially to the lawsuit, that the claims will look more legitimate. But at this point, I don't think Jenny Slate or anyone else on the cast really wants to jump aboard the Plantation Khaleesi's yacht that seems to be sinking rather quickly.